Hi, I'm Billy, and this is the Unlock Your Child's Full Potential podcast. I'm a mom of three lovely girls, and I'm looking for answers. I'm looking for ways to fill the gaps left by the school system and teach my kids the lessons that are going to prepare them for real life. I want to learn practical tips that I can use to raise capable and confident young people who are kind, caring, and authentic, and who bring value to the world. I know it's a lot. But I think as parents, we have the unique role of nurturing the potential of the special human beings entrusted to our care. We can't expect school and the teachers to do everything, and we don't want to let the environment decide who our kids become. It's up to us to coach our children on how to be successful and fulfilled. That's my goal here, to talk to as many parents, educators, experts, you name it, and ask the questions. Look for the universal principles. Find as many tools as possible to be a better parent and give my kids a head start in life. If that resonates with you, join me every Wednesday and let's inspire each other to create an environment where our children can blossom into the best versions of themselves. Hello, friends. Today we have a wonderful topic to talk about: how to give love and how to receive it. My guest, Paul Zolman, is the author of the book Role of Love, the most effective way to demonstrate love every day. Paul has created a new way to demonstrate the principles of the 5 love languages. His system is so easy that even young children can be trained in this love-giving game. By learning to give love away, we can sharpen our skills to recognize love when it comes our way and to respond appropriately. Paul claims that the way you love others can actually transform your life. Welcome, Paul. Happy to have you here.
Thank you, Billy. So glad to be here with you.
I know your childhood experience was the opposite of love. Would you tell us a bit about your story and how you moved from a boot camp of abuse to being a person who loves everyone and can find good about anyone in any circumstance?
So I want to start a little bit back with my grandfather, because I think what I had, or what happened to me in my home when I was growing up, was more of a generational thing, not a genetic thing, but something that was passed down from generation to generation. There was dysfunction in my grandfather's family. He had 9 children. Then his wife passed away. And he was, as anybody would, he was absolutely distraught about that. In fact, so distraught that he made some errors in judgment, in my mind. Maybe not, or maybe I wouldn't be here if he hadn't. But he actually decided to sell the farm, sell all the equipment. And then when people came to the auction, this was in the early 1900s, when people came to the auction, he would also say, "And would you like this child? And would you like this child?" And he systematically gave all the children away except for one. And he took that one child with him and moved to Montana in the United States. And in Montana, he found a school teacher that had never been married. He married her, had 10 more children, of which my father was number 6. So my father's number 15, the 15th child of 19 children. And he was born in 1922. And when he was 10 years old, his father passed away. So here he is, he's 10 years old, and it's in the middle of the Great Depression in 1932. My father wasn't able to continue to go to school, so he graduated from 8th grade and never went back to school ever to finish his high school. And so with that education, he could only get a job like a truck driver. And so that's what he did. He was gone most of the week, but would come home on the weekends. And what I loved about my father is that he would date my mother every Friday. He would not fail dating my mother. Great. It was a great loving thing that he did. And I loved how he cherished women. Unfortunately for me, I was the thorn between 2 roses, a boy between 2 girls at the end of the children my father had. I'm number 10 of 11 children. So, well, my father scaled it down, Billy. His father had 19 children. He only had 11, just a very much smaller family.
Much smaller, yeah.
So I scaled it down even a little bit more. I only have 8 children. And then my children only have 3 children apiece right now. So
I thought I have a big family with 3 children, but wow, nothing close.
3 children is still quite a few. But my philosophy is that if you can juggle 3, you can juggle 8, you can juggle 10. And it's all the same after that. But three, once you get to three, if you can do three, you're golden. You can keep going. Anyway, so what happened at that date? It was always at the Maverick Bar, and it was always over alcohol. And as my mother's saying how her week went, I can imagine my mother, I was never there, but I can imagine my mother starting at the top of the list, the firstborn, and then all the way down. So by the time they get down to number 10, me, by the time they get to me, he's really pretty upset about all the things that happened in the family while he's gone on this trip trying to provide for the family. He's really ready to blow. And what I noticed of it is he was annoyed and annoyed, more stacking that annoyance, and then he'd flash or burst. It would just come out, that anger would come out. And either we get the belt or we get a very severe spanking. And I remember one time being spanked so severely that I was black and blue for about 3 weeks or more. I tried to be a really good boy because I knew that if I hurt my sisters in any way, he was there and he was there to protect them. He was a bull in a china shop trying to protect those girls. I really thought I was a pretty good kid. Apparently wasn't. And I got punished for that. But I do remember good times as a child. I remember playing games, and I remember these games bringing the family together. To get out of that type of situation, we didn't know what to do at that time. There weren't a lot of agencies to report child abuse to. There weren't anybody to talk to. Where are you going to go to find help for that type of situation? And such was the time when I was growing up. Remember, I'm number 10 of 11 children, and I kind of had to do what they chose to do. And I became more of a follower that way. So I had some difficult time, but I did take a big step when I was 17 years old. Right after my junior year of high school, I moved out and moved with my brother. My brother was trying to be a very good father. He only had a couple of children at the time, and I was helpful around the house, trying to be as helpful as possible, trying to help him with his children. And then he had the same problem that I saw in my father, that he'd be annoyed, and then he'd flash. Then he'd have this outburst of anger. And it was just something that I also had some residual anger from that childhood. What would happen is that I would have the same thing, being annoyed at something somebody else was doing, which now I realize that I had no control over what they're doing. There's no reason for me to be annoyed. That was their choice. I don't have any control over their choices and what they're doing. So I figured out that there's actually a lane, kind of a lane that I'm supposed to stay in. You stay in your lane and you do what you determine that you're going to do. And then if you're going to be a good person, that's what you do. Stop worrying about what other people are doing. I'm not their judge, and I'm not here to correct them at this time. They weren't my children. And parents are in a place, Billy, that we have to correct our children from time to time. We have to encourage them, but I'm suggesting that we can do that with love. And I had problems with a few of my children that way, that it's just what I was doing wasn't working. And I'm sure parents listening right now have some children that maybe they're not connecting with their children. Some days it might be great, but other days it might be really, really hard to connect with the children, to have them do what is the right thing to do and empower them to make their own choices. So I thought, there's got to be a way that I can empower myself to make the right choices. Because what I found out, Billy, is that at age 35, I was still blaming my father for social awkwardness. I mean, it's very awkward if you get very angry in front of other people in a social situation. What are you going to do? How do you rein that in? How do you bring that back? It's out there. You spilled it. How's it going to come back? And so it's just frustrating like that. And I kept blaming my father. What I realized at age 35 is that if I blame him, I don't have to do anything about it. But he was gone. He had died 7 years before that. I was still blaming this man that was not even here. I had no opportunity to talk through it with him about that, about my feelings that way. I still was blaming him though. So blame is a great excuse for not having to change. I didn't think I had to change because it was his problem. If it's his problem, I don't have to do a thing. And I think that if we can avoid that, and help teach our children responsibility, think the world's going to be a better place. Fast forward a little bit. I started reading the Color Code and then settled on Five Love Languages written by Dr. Gary Chapman. And for your listeners that may not have read it, it actually is a book about 5 ways that people like to be loved. One of those ways might be a way that you like to be loved the most, or that you consider being loved the most. He calls it your primary love language. So most people just operate in the primary love language, giving it away in hopes that it'll come right back to them. And so that's kind of the reciprocity that they're looking for there is, I call it a transaction. And to me, that didn't sound like love. But I kept reading through the 5 love languages, and I really liked the principles, because what Dr. Chapman did, he's a reverend, a pastor for a church. And as a reverend, he said all these 5 love languages reconcile to what Jesus Christ did in his lifetime. So the 5 love languages are service. Jesus served people. He touched people. He touched their eyes or their ears so they might see or they might hear. So we know that his ministry, part of his ministry, was about touch. He had the gifts of the Spirit. He spent time with people, and we love his words. So the words become the scriptures, what we have today. So those are the 5 love languages. They resonated with me, but the application didn't really work for me. I come from a background, I did not know what love was. Because of where I came from, I didn't realize what love was really about. It was kind of an angry culture that has with it the humor of anger, the biting sarcasm. It has all those things of anger, the vocabulary, just everything about anger is kind of in a culture of itself. And I just didn't want to be there. So Dr. Chapman's application didn't work for me. What I understood from it is that, Billy, if I guessed what love language you are, and if I cater to that, then we're going to be buddies. I'm a bad guesser. Most likely, most of the time, it's not going to happen. There's got to be a better way. So I thought, well, Dr. Chapman has this little survey. If I take this survey, maybe I can find out what my love language is. But then after I took the survey, I thought, well, what do I do with this? How am I going to send that out? What do I do? Advertise? Hello, Billy, I'm Gifts. What do you have for me today? That's a little bit awkward, just really awkward. That didn't work for me either. So I thought, I remembered playing games as a kid, and that brought the family together. What if I made this a game? So with that idea, I contacted Dr. Chapman and said, are you licensing those little pictures, the icons that you have for each one of the love languages? And his attorney wrote back and said, no, we're not doing that. So I contacted a local attorney and found out that theory, like the love language theory, is not copyrightable. Application is. So I decided I'd make my own little icons and make it into a game. And that's what I've done. I made it into a dice. I'm holding up, for the listeners, I'm holding up a dice that's about 1 inch by 1 inch. It has someone that's holding a platter, like a server at a restaurant possibly. Nothing on the platter, but this represents the picture for service. Now I've got the 2 hands together. When you put your hands together and crunch your fingers a little bit and put them together, it makes a heart. With outside of that heart, there's a conversation flyout. So these would be the words. Now I've got a hand holding an hourglass. The hourglass it represents time. I've got a picture of a present on there. And then the last one is 2 hands touching one another for touch. So those are the 5 love languages. There's 6 sides on the dice, obviously. So the 6th side has a hand with a question mark on it. And that one surprised me. On that day, you're just going to do random acts of kindness. So Billy, there's just 2 instructions. You roll the die every day. That's the love language you practice giving away all day that day. In this journey that I've had, I realized that I don't have any control over love coming my way. I can't bid it to come my way. If I ask somebody to love me, then they might love me out of duty. That kind of contaminates it a little bit from being true love. So what I think true love is sending love out without any expectation that it's coming back. But you know it's going to come back. You realize that you know about karma. you know about the law of attraction, you know about the law of the harvest. Whatever it is that you believe, when you send something out, it's going to come back to you. Think of that when you send anger out, though. It comes back immediately. Sometimes it'll come back 10 times worse than what you send it out. So don't be doing that. We don't want, definitely don't want to do that.
Definitely.
The best part about this, Billy, is that as you're sending it out over a 30-day period, you will have sent out all 5 love languages by rolling the die. When you know them backwards and forwards, it's very easy to see it when it's coming your way. And then you can respond appropriately. As I mentioned, most people can only see their primary love language and respond to that. But this way, you'll be able to see all the love languages and say, oh, they're loving on me. And then you can respond back.
So it's going to be easier to understand what the primary love language of our child is if we use the game.
Absolutely. What you're watching for, Billy, is you're watching when they light up. And kids light up all the time. They can't hold it back. They just light up, say, oh, that was fun. And they'll say it's very exciting. So when you're watching, when you're doing that love language, when they're lighting up, you just take note that that's their primary love language. That's what they like. And just wash, rinse, and repeat. And it may be different from day to day, but just keep track of what they like. When you're giving it away, watch what they like.
Okay, I'm hopping in for just a minute to tell you about the free resource I recently created. It's called the Connection Blueprint, and it consists of 5 tools that will help you improve the relationship with your child and create an environment where your kid feels seen, heard, and loved. After all the lessons we want to teach our kids require us to first have a trusting relationship with them so that they're ready to hear our advice and lean on our support. Anytime I feel disconnected and out of sync with my own children, I get back to this blueprint, put the tools to practice, and it works wonders. I'm sure having a loving and trusting relationship with your kids is a top priority for you too. So check the show notes and get your copy of the Connection Blueprint. And once we find it, the primary, do we focus solely on that, or we still roll the dice every day to express other types of love language?
Yeah, I would suggest that you still roll the die, because it's not only, Dr. Chapman would suggest that it be only to your significant other people, or only to your children, only to your family. I'm suggesting that you do it to everybody. That's why you're rolling the die every day. I created this when I was single, so I didn't have a significant other. I didn't have anybody. I just said, okay, everybody, you're all game. You're all my significant others. And so I just sent out the love, all that I could. And some people responded with like the wow effect, and it just brightened their day. It made their day. When that happens, they're going to also tell others about it and help others feel uplifted too. The same thing happens with anger, though. If you make them angry or you help them become angry, help them choose to be angry, they're going to help others choose to be angry, and everybody's going to be so miserable. Misery loves company, you've heard.
Yeah, let's be force for good. So every member of the family rolls the die in the morning, or how do you do that practically?
You can do it individually or you can do it together. There was a family that I tested this with that chose to do it individually. And so there are 5 children in that family, small family. The youngest was 4 years old. I might just make a note to the listeners that on the die, there are no words. It's all pictures. So even young children that can't even read, they understand what a picture means. That's how they learn to read, is when you're showing them the pictures in the book, that you're reading them. So this young 4-year-old, one day he rolls physical touch, and he's jumping up and down, pumping his fist, says, yes, physical touch, physical touch. And immediately he went to beat up on his brothers. And the mother had to suppress the laughter, saw it perfectly as a teaching moment, said, no, son, this is appropriate physical touch. It'd be the high five, the fist bump, the hugs. Those are appropriate physical touch. And so it became a teaching moment, not only for that 4-year-old, but for all the siblings as well. A great teaching tool to teach children how to love. One other thing that I'm testing, Billy, and I know you've got questions, but one other thing I wanted to say about the children is I'm testing it in schools, and it's in the younger grades in school where they're in the same classroom all the day long. So at the beginning of the day, as a class, they roll the die. The teacher may explain for 30 seconds or maybe a minute what we're looking for that day. What kind of opportunities are the children watching for that day? At the end of the day, what I have them do is writing what they rolled, what opportunities they saw to love in that way, then what they did about those opportunities in a journal. So it's not a book journal type journal, but it's just a sheet of paper. Talked with several teachers. The last 10 to 15 minutes of the day is the children are very antsy. They've been there all day. They know the bell's going to ring. They know if they got in any trouble that the teacher's not going to stay after to be with them to take care of the trouble. So they're really kind of getting away with whatever they want to get away with. And so it's a non-productive time of the day. Let's take that non-productive time of the day, have them write in that journal. So what happens is that they don't have to wait like I did until age 35 to realize, oh, I'm responsible for my own actions. Right then and there in the classroom, they're being taught how to act, and they have to report on what they did that day. That reporting system makes them totally accountable for what they do. And I think that's going to tamp down a lot of misbehavior, a lot of violence, a lot of bullying in the classroom, so that the kids won't have to deal with that. They're just working on their loving skills every day.
I love that. And yet we can do it at home too. If the school the kids are in is not currently doing that, we can ask the kids, how did you express love today? And what did you receive? So I love that practice.
So you can practice the answer to your question. You can practice it as a family, or you can practice it individually. My wife and I actually do it individually. She doesn't want to know what I've rolled because she wants to guess. What is he doing? What kind of love is he expressing today? So it makes it a little bit more fun. I like the creativity of just choosing a theme or an intention for every single day. This is intentional. On purpose, you're sending out love in that way that day. And it changes every day. So it keeps a little spice in the marriage. It's not the same old Monday thing every day. You're sending out love in a different way every single day. Opportunities will be absolutely different every single day.
That was my next question. What benefits have you seen since you started to use the die and the approach?
The biggest benefit for me is that, remember I had those flashes, the annoyance, the annoyance, the annoyance, and then the flash. What I realized, Billy, through this whole process is I was looking at people and say, what's wrong with that person? Why are they doing that? And thought I had control or had any say about what they're doing. I don't. I realized I don't. I had to pull back and say, that's not my lane. They're making their own choices. I can ask them a question and say, you're really going to do that? You don't have any authority to pass any judgment on another person. That got me in a lot of trouble. That became an annoyance. And little things like that, that other people did, nothing I do annoys me. It doesn't. It's funny. It seems funny to say that, but I'm not annoyed at myself most of the time. But I can be annoyed at other people. So if I'm not annoyed at myself, there's the answer there. Just keep focused on what I choose to do. And I choose to send love out every single day. I send it out. Forget about what they're doing. It's not in my lane. As far as children go, you can guide them and help them make choices. Well, what I found out is there's 3 choices a person can make when they feel they know where they're at. They can stay where they're at by blaming other people, and then they're not going to move one direction or another. Or they can become more angry, or they can become a lot more nice. And I think that that's kind of what we want to do. We want to just send out goodness, watch for the good in people. Maybe several mothers that are listening now have ever been to a yoga class. At the very end of the yoga class, the instructor will put their hands together like this, and they'll bow their head and they'll say, Namaste. The Hindu interpretation of Namaste means the divine in me sees the divine in you. That's what we're trying to accomplish here. We're trying to see the good of people and focus on that. Anything you focus on is going to become larger. So if your child makes a mistake, if you will focus on that, it's going to get larger. Parents, is that really what we want? I don't think so. You wouldn't make that choice if you knew that that's what's going to happen. And that focusing on it is what really happens. Having 8 children, I know it happens. I know that's a true principle of parenting, that if you focus on the mistake, that's going to get larger. Don't want to do that. You focus on what they do right. Focus on the good parts about them. Focus on the good things they do every day. Watch them beam with that praise. At the same time, that will grow bigger and bigger. They'll choose to do that more and more. Focus the attention where you want to give them attention. And that I would think would be the divine parts that we see in our children.
Great point. Focus on the good stuff. I totally agree. We focus too much on correcting them, and they feel they're wrong all the time. Is there anything else you would like to share that we didn't touch upon?
Just like to say that it can move things, move mountains only from where we stand. And we can only really do it in our neighborhoods, in our communities, in wherever we live. We could travel the world and spread a little kindness here and there, but it really doesn't have a lasting effect unless we do it right where we stand. And I think that we've got all the tools with us right now, all the tools necessary to lift or to love where we stand, love where we live, love in our communities right now. We can serve in our communities, we can volunteer, we can help our neighbors, we can help our families, we can help the schools, and we can help in so many different ways. That's probably the best thing that we can do. If we want to start a love revolution, give the world the peace that we really need, right at home is a great way to start. And I love your podcast, Billy, for that reason, that you're just trying to find ideas to better raise children, better raise the next generation so that they will be more loving, that they'll be more caring about one another. Cancel the cancel attitude, the cancel culture, cancel that. We're human beings. We have to love one another and we have to rely on one another. We're not islands. We just have to help love one another. And just remember, stay in your lane. Don't be looking at what other people are doing or doing wrong or wrong in your sight. It's all subjective. They're doing what they choose to do. Just stay in your lane and do what you choose to do. And hopefully that's going to be love. Send it up.
Amazing. I love the love revolution theme. And you've gone a long way. You broke a generational cycle yourself. So kudos to that. Thank you for teaching us some strategies on how to connect on a deeper level with our kids. Would you like to share with our listeners where they can find the book and the dice and just connect with you?
It's rolloflove.com, ROLE of love.com. Again, ROLL is outside you. That's circumstances. ROLE is the change that happens within. So ROLE of love.com is my website. You can buy the book, the journal, the dice, or in a bundle. It's less than $30 US for the bundle, a lot less than any single session of therapy. And it's really the very easiest therapy that you can do for yourself and your children. And to teach them how to love. A lot of the media will teach your children to focus on the negative out there, focus on things that are happening that are bad, focus on the good. Teach them to focus on the good, and it's going to be a lot better.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you so much.
It was an awesome conversation.
A delight to be with you, Billy. You're wonderful.
Thank you so much for listening and letting me be a part of your day. If you enjoyed this episode or the show in general, please share it with a friend and help me reach more moms around the world. Also, if you find some value in this podcast and would like to help support it, please visit my Ko-fi page. The link is in the show notes. Any contribution is much appreciated. And lastly, don't forget to subscribe so you get notified when a new episode drops. I'll see you next week.